Senior Traffic Coordinator Ravta sipped at the boiling Jav extract as he looked at the massive glowing holographic sphere in the middle of his domain that twinkled with lights that represented the lifeblood of the Ascendancy. It is quite impressive. Sir? Trainee Korf said, his eye stalks wiggling as he took in the sphere that showed all traffic moving through the home system, both in and out of relativistic space-time. Yes. Yes, it is, I suppose, Ravta said, swelling with pride and pretending. The sight was every day for him. Now let us get to work. Your certification isn't going to approve itself. Korf wiggled his eye stalks in the appropriate show of humor. Ravta dipped his in approval. The joke wasn't that funny, but this one could show the proper deference. Tell me what you see, Ravta said, peering at the display through his special eyepieces. Korf did the same, his eye stalks wiggling as he skittered this way and that, accompanying himself with the view through those eyepieces that put him in the middle of the massive display. I see traffic nominal. Excellency, Korf finally said. Ravta performed his own cursory examination of traffic through the home system. All seemed well. Very good, Korf, he said. Today should be easy enough for you. It's not like we have any fleets massing. For a clearance operation. He lowered his eye stalks in thanks for that. The last thing he needed with a trainee following him around was the responsibility of flinging a battle fleet into non-relativistic fold space so they could pacify some biosphere or another. No. He could distract himself with coming up for a proper excuse why he wouldn't be home to his broodmate this evening. A lovely young thing with a carapace as pink as the oceans themselves from requisitions had caught his eye, and... Excellency, Korf said, a touch of hesitation in his deference. What's that? Ravta asked, masking his irritation. There is a signature moving into the home system on trajectory ZZ9 plural Z alpha, the trainee said. Ravta frowned as he moved to that heading and watched the telltale signature of something large moving through fold space. He frowned, searching his fore and hindbrains for what it could possibly be, then, Ah yes, he said, snapping his foreclaws. That is a battle fleet sent to pacify some small blue world in the western spiral arm of our galaxy. A blue world? Korf asked, unable to hide his disgust. The water is all the wrong color, Ravta said. No microscopic corivas in their oceans to make the world a proper pink, but it has some resource or another that requisitions wants and a breathable atmosphere, so we sent a battle fleet to pacify the locals. They must have finished up early. Course, Excellency, Korf said, already moving his eyes elsewhere. A battle fleet pacifying a world was hardly worth noting for the Ascendancy. The incoming battle fleet is noted. Ravta returned his thoughts to the pretty young thing and her distracting carapace in requisitions and let Korf do most of the work. That was the beauty of checking out trainees. They did all the work, he took all the credit, and they thanked him for it at the end of the day as long as he signed off on their Excellency, Korf said, sounding even more perturbed. What is it, trainee? Ravta asked, this time letting some of his irritation show. I hesitate to bother your Excellency, Senior Traffic Coordinator, but... Do go on, Ravta said, snapping an irritated claw at him to cut off the buttering up before it really got started. It's just that the battle fleet is coming in rather fast, Excellency. Ravta looked at the readout. Sure enough, they were still coming in through fold space at several times the speed of light. Far faster than any fleet had any business traveling in his sphere of authority. Well, we shall see about that, Ravta said, his eye stalks quivering. Ascendancy battle fleet, please state why you are continuing into the home system at your current speed and slow down immediately. Static met them, which was odd considering he was using a fold space communicator. Regulations state that any ship entering the home system at fold space velocities needs to be met with an interdiction flute. I know what the regulations are, Ravta snapped, his eye stalks quivering even more at this young trainee lecturing him on regulations. We're going to show this hotshot that commanding a backwater pacification fleet doesn't give him the right to defy me. He flipped on the fold space communicator again. This time he spoke with all the authority befitting his station. Battle Fleet Commander, he said, scorn dripping from his words. This is Senior Traffic Coordinator Ravta, Head of Traffic Coordination for the home system. You will slow down now. Sorry, can't. Ravta blinked at the communicator. Had that commander just dared to defy him? Senior Traffic Coordinator, Korf said, I must respectfully remind you. Why can't you slow down? Are you suffering an emergency? Ravta said, biting off every word. Everything is under control, the voice came back. Situation normal. Excellency. Watch and learn, trainee, Ravta said, pulling himself up to his full height. This is all quite irregular, refusing to address us with the proper deference and speaking in that odd, informal way. But it's time for you to get a lesson in why being a traffic coordinator is such an important position. Ravta turned his communicator back on. Battlefleet, how can your situation be normal if you are still proceeding? You will stand down now, or there will be consequences. Had a slight weapons malfunction, but, everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you? Ravta's eye stalks ceased, quivering with rage, and went rigid as blood pumped through them. That is it! I am sending a battle fleet to intercept you, and... Senior Traffic Coordinator, Interdiction Fleet Priority Intercept on heading ZZ9 plural, Z Alpha, Traffic Coordinator, Emergency Override 1A2B3C, D0. The screeching nearly deafened Ravta's hearing pits. Then he turned to look at what Kolf had seen, and the blood pumping in his veins went boiling with fear. The angry correction for daring to use the emergency override for the whole of the home system as a trainee came out as a terrified sigh instead, because he could see what the trainee had already seen. The incoming battle fleet wasn't merely moving through the system at far above the accepted speed limit. No. It was accelerating to dangerous speeds, accelerating straight towards home. And there was something massive moving with the battle fleet, something that couldn't possibly be a ship, something that had been masked as they approached through the outer traffic nets. What are they? I expect you're starting to realize what's happening now, the voice said, speaking, haltingly but using the proper words. There was none of the proper respect, but why would the creatures piloting that ship show them any respect? What is that? Kolf said, mewling quietly as he watched the approach. He saw the mistake too late. They had interdiction fleets, to be sure, but they were designed to stop battle fleets that slowed at the edge of the system to offer battle at speeds that wouldn't cause the massive, potentially planet-ending explosions that inevitably resulted. From any mass traveling at FTL speeds slamming into a slower mass moving through the system, with the mass they were dragging, they would more than end any planet they slammed into. The crazy, suicidal cracked shells. I reckon ours isn't the only world you've done this to, and this home place of yours isn't the only system you've infested. That's okay. To paraphrase an ancient battle cry from our world, now we have FTL drives. Ho ho ho. What does that even mean? Kolf growled. The boiling in Ravta's blood almost had him passing out. The profile of the massive object they were towing came back. A massive object, nearly the size of a small moon, somehow being moved through fold space suspended between several ascendancy ships. How are they doing that? Kolf asked, the fear plain as he saw death hurtling towards them. That's not possible! I don't know, Ravta said, closing his eye stalks, as the deadly projectile hurtled towards them. It wouldn't be long now. Only time for one last transmission from these damnable creatures insane enough to kill themselves instead of offering honorable battle as was proper in the civilized galaxy. Your mistake was trying to preserve our biosphere so you could use it, the voice said. Thing is, we need you dead more than we need your biosphere intact. Thanks for reading. I'm an indie writer, but I've never done a humanity fuck yeah story before. I've always loved the genre, and I've lurked on this sub for years, figuring maybe I'd submit someday. Today I was feeling burnt out on my latest novel, so I threw this together as a challenge to come up with a ridiculously short story. Hope you liked it, and if you didn't, it was only 1,400 words, so I didn't waste much of your time. Start new amazing story. Junior Assistant Deputy Vice Underlord of Conquest Hrothis the Terrible tapped at the glowing rock slate in front of him in annoyance. It howled with the souls of the damned, but that was nothing to the frustration rattling around in his head. And if you would please sign here and here as well, the quartermaster demon said, oblivious to the pain he was causing Hrothis with his every word. He was meant to conquer worlds, not sit here arguing with an imp from the quartermaster division about requisitioning swords infused with the souls of the damned. He didn't care if they were in short supply since it had been an eon since the last tribulation. Fine, he growled, opening a vein in his finger and pressing it where indicated on the stone. He muttered the whole time. What idiot decided we could only use soul-infused blades from the plane we're going to conquer again? I don't make the rules. I just make sure we follow 'em, the imp said with a shrug. The howls of the damned grew louder and the tablet glowed with unholy energy. Very well, the imp sniffed. It would appear everything is in order. Have a good invasion. Rothes frowned. The imp was entirely too cheery for an Remp working the supply lines for the armies of the damned. Why are you so happy? He growled. He only had one mode, as he prepared to enter a new plane, and it was unpleasant. You don't get to go through the portal and join in the conquest. Exactly, the imp said, still sounding entirely too cheerful. Have fun storming the lower planes. Rothes frowned as he turned and watched the imp go. Then again, the motives of imps were often impenetrable. He felt better when he looked out across the vast armies of the damned arrayed in seemingly limitless lines. The convergence would begin soon, and the time of a new tribulation would be at hand. The mortals on this plane have no idea what is coming, Rothes said, tightening his grip on his sword of flames as his skeletal fiery horse danced beneath him with the nervous anticipation of the invasion. But how could that be so, Underlord? Hethon asked, peering up at Rothes. It has only been an eon. Some planes are closer to ours, and so they know of the convergence, but time flows differently for us than it does for the humans, Rothes replied. Many of us were here for the last tribulation. Oh, how their mountains and valleys ran with blood. It was so sweet before the convergence came to an end. It sounds amazing, Hethon said, his body shaking with the anticipation. This world was well known as one of the diamonds of the conquests, a world with enough time between tribulations that they'd built new civilizations begging to be brought low by the time the conquest began anew. Remember that the last tribulation was many lifetimes ago for them, Rothes continued. So much time passes between tribulations that they've often forgotten what it truly means, or their civilization has been so thoroughly destroyed that they don't remember us at all. What an odd way to run a civilization, Hethon said, staring at the points of light moving closer in the distance as the convergence of planes drew near. It is, to be sure, Rothes said. Everyone knows the most perfect way to organize a society is with the lawful codification of a system wherein might and murder make right, and the strongest prevail and make society stronger. Of course, Hethon said, nodding. It was only natural, of course. It was the way their plane of existence had worked for eons, and it hadn't steered them wrong so far. Unless you were one of the less powerful who might was making its bitch at the moment, but Rothes had always one of the mighty who didn't concern himself with the affairs of lesser demons. Their world was plunged into ice. 2 tribulations back, and the flood that ended the last one was truly epic, Rothes said, shaking his head and laughing. We knocked out a thin spit of land that separated a massive valley nearly the size of a continent and let the ocean flood in as a final fuck you to the natives before the convergence ended. You'd think that would really piss them off, Hethon said. If they remember it, then it's likely a whispered legend. Now silence. The convergence is almost upon us, Rothes said. The convergence ran in a line as the planes came into alignment, and the flaring light of portals opening up between different planes of existence bathed Rothes in an odd blue light that he remembered all too well. Prepare yourself for one hell of a time, my son, he said, putting a hand on Hethon's shoulder and allowing himself a personal moment where he wasn't commanding the unvanquished legions. I've taught you well, and it's time for you to put those skills to good use. Yes, Underlord, Hethon said, maintaining the propriety of the chain of command despite their family connection. They stared along the lines at the countless legions of hell arrayed for battle. As the gates opened, they started marching, and Rothes could hardly fault them for being eager to get to the slaughter. I wish we were one of the earlier groups entering, Hethon said, staring longingly at the lucky bastards getting to go to the conflict ahead of them. Those legions, moved impossibly fast as they were wrapped in bubbles of time from the other side, though Hrathis knew from experience that for them, time was still flowing normally. It was a trick of the convergence and how time worked between Hell and other planes where time ran differently. The portals were being opened as quickly as possible on this side, but even that small difference of a few minutes could mean a difference of decades or centuries on the other side, depending on how far apart along the convergence the two portals were. So do all who are enjoying their first convergence, but don't worry, Hrathis said. Convergences with this world last 1,000 of their years as they reckon it, so there will be plenty left for us to ravage. Besides, we're close enough to the beginning that we should get there before their current civilization has fallen and had to regroup. He'd been stuck invading after the apocalypse before, and it was his learned opinion that toppling a civilization at its height was always more fun than destroying whatever rose from the ashes 2 or 3 invasions down the line. As you say, Underlord, Ethon said. Hrathis watched as the convergence drew closer, and legions of the damned threw themselves into the localized space-time on the other side of the portal. Then a new light bathed him from down near the first portals, where the rocky hellscape was now empty. Hrathis frowned and covered his eyes as something as bright as the sun came from the other side of the first portal. Then another. Father? Ethon said, forgetting himself in his uncertainty. His voice wavered. Have you seen that before? I have not, Hrathis said, wondering what could possibly create a light that bright. It would have been blinding if they were closer, almost like his memory of looking into that damnably bright yellow star on the world they were invading. Then the convergence reached him, and everything on the other side of their localized bubble of space-time slowed to a stop. He stared in fascination at that blinding light coming out of 3 of the initial portals now, and felt the stirrings of something wholly unfamiliar to him. It didn't rise to the level of terror. No, terror was something he inspired in the sub-creatures on the lesser planes they invaded to rape and pillage and bring back needed supplies to keep their demonic war machine running. It wasn't even fear or worry. Fear was almost as foreign to him as terror. Something he hadn't felt since he was young enough and small enough that fending for himself was a dicey proposition. Worry wasn't something a demon with his confidence ever felt. There was disquiet lurking in the back of his mind, though. The sure sense there was something different about this convergence. Then he was passing through the portal to a new world, looking forward to conquest in one of the fattest and plumpest of the many worlds the unvanquished legions had traveled to. Amazing, Hathon said, blinking as they stepped into the light. The sky is blue. It takes some getting used. 2, Hrathis said, taking a deep breath and savoring a smell that had been lost to him for an eon. It brought to mind old conquests. Horrors visited upon an unsuspecting world, the anticipation of destruction to come. Father, what is that? Hathon asked. Hrathis was about to chide his son for breaking the chain of command when he heard it as well. A booming, crackling voice, speaking from everywhere and nowhere at once. They are like no words I've ever heard before, he muttered, glancing at their surroundings. 50, 49. Hrathis held his sword high above him and bellowed. His ever-undefeated legion bellowed behind him in response as they came through the portal. His steed danced, feeling its rider's anticipation of the slaughter to come, though there were no armies to meet him. Odd that. The other armies that came through should have alerted the locals of the danger, for all that there was no defeating the legions. No, all he saw was something glittering in the far distance. 35, 34. Forward. My legions! Hrathis bellowed, pointing his flaming sword towards that gleaming light. That had to mean civilization. Civilization meant destruction. It was time to remind this world of what a tribulation was. What are those words? Hathon asked. They seem important. And where is that voice coming from? 20. Rip and tear. Suddenly, an unholy wail, like nothing Hrathis had ever heard before, filled his ears. And it wasn't an unpleasant, unholy wail. It was like the screeching of some monstrosity he'd never want to meet face to face. That unquiet dread filling his mind turned to fear. He looked around for the source of the attack even as his legions fell to their knees and wailed at the noise coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. What is this? Hrathis bellowed, anger at his legions overcoming the fear. "Get up! This world is ours to conquer! Get up!" He would not be the only demon lord from the legions of hell who lost, because his troops were craven fools afraid of something they didn't understand, even as the fear wormed its way through him. That, screeching continued, a pulsing beat that sounded almost like music, but he couldn't imagine someone enjoying that. 19. 18. "I'm starting to see what Oppenheimer was talking about," Colonel Halcyon said, the set of his face grim as he held his hand over the switch. General Ripper grunted. "Do you have any idea how hard it was to cover up literal armies of hell marching through a portal between worlds onto the test range we set up to catch 'em?" "I see why it's a 2-man operation now," Halcyon conceded. 10, 9. "Do you think they have any idea what's about to happen to them?" General Ripper asked, preferring to watch through the specialized binoculars rather than the live satellite feed. 5, 4. "Not a fucking clue," Colonel Halcyon said, flipping the safety and pressing his thumb against the big red button. 3, 2, 1. General Ripper kept his eyes on the show as Halcyon pressed the button, and another legion of the unvanquished armies of hell vanished in the white-hot heat of atomic fire. The lenses on his binoculars automatically adjusted for the bright flash that would have blinded him otherwise. He watched with no small degree of pleasure as the shockwave in a fireball that was literally hotter than the fires of hell surrounded them. "Maybe now they'll never invade a world with atomic weapons," Ripper said, a grin splitting his face. "But the invasions keep coming," Halcyon said. "You'll be in command the next time one of these events happens, so it's time for you to know the full truth," Ripper said, finally turning to face his protege. "The full truth?" Halcyon asked, but Ripper held up a hand to stop him before he could rattle off all his clearances. "This is something that is very need to know, and you need to know it since I'll be retired and sipping Mai Tais on the beach somewhere warm and sunny by the time the next invasion comes around," he said. "Yes, sir," Halcyon said. "What you're seeing out there is the beauty of the time dilation between our two worlds," Ripper said. "Best we can tell from the captives we took in the first few invasions, this convergence between planes happens in a linear fashion, so their legions come through those portals one after another as the convergence moves along the line and lets them open them. So they're all coming through almost at once on their end, but from our point of view it's taking decades," Halcyon said, the full implication dawning on him. "That's right," Ripper grunted. "It'll be centuries before they stop coming through. They say the convergence lasts at least 1,000 of our years." "Damn," Halcyon breathed. "That also means it won't be until towards the end of this convergence that they get one hell of a clue something's going wrong on our side." "What will that clue be, sir?" Halcyon asked. Ripper's grin got even wider if that was possible. "The door swings both ways, son." "The door swings both ways," Halcyon breathed, his eyes going wide. "Oh yes, we're spreading these blasts out over decades, maybe even centuries on our end, but from their point of view, they're going to have a few hundred atomic blasts blowing back through those portals all at once. You know, I thought the rip and tear thing accompanied by some Mick Gordon was a little much when I added it in," Halcyon said, "but I'm starting to think that wasn't enough of a warning for those poor demon bastards." "It's important to take your fun where you can get it in this job," Ripper said, turning back to the massive fireball spreading into the sky in the distance, though not nearly as massive as it should have been considering how many megatons the bomb was packing. Like an appreciable fraction of those megatons were being sucked away to someplace that was suddenly having a very bad day. Thanks for reading. Enjoy next story. My crew were definitely not happy with me, but they were being paid to follow orders, not be scared. Since humanity's introduction to the galactic stage, everyone has been avoiding them like the blue plague. First contact was a nightmare for the entire galaxy. No losses, no deaths, no grand battle, just a collective gasp of, what the hell are they even, by the entire galaxy before effectively hiding in a shadowy corner. I do in fact share my crew's concerns, but I smell money. 2 years of being in the shadows attempting to not antagonize a sleeping giant of war has left the market wide open. My crew didn't know it, but I was about to make all of us stinking rich. "Are we close?" I asked from my chair. "Yes, sir. We'll be out of slip in a minute." Sensors are going crazy, though, Ensign Wartak said from his seat. I know. The system we're aiming for is owned by a private entity, though, not a massive fleet. It should be easy to establish contact, I replied. Are you sure about this, sir? Aluka, my gunnery sergeant, asked. No, but it's better than debt slavery or the gallows, isn't it? I looked at them with an accusatory glare. Don't need to salt the wound, sir. Olivar, my comms officer, replied. Apparently I did. This is everyone's last chance. My merchant's bones are tingling. I know this is going to be worth it. 200 years of this, I've never been wrong, I said with a crooked grin. Slip in 2. 1. We all collectively shat ourselves nearly to death at the sight of one of the humans' attack moons. We had appeared out of the slip close enough to it. It immediately registered our presence, and we had 7,000 cannons aimed at us almost instantly. The frigging beast was enormous. The humans basically just took an entire planet, a mid-sized moon in this case, and saturated its surface with cannons, armor plating, and industry. If it wasn't for the giant bugger-off rocket engine on the rear, it would be unmistakable for a manufacturing world. I had seen some of the initial reports and saw some photos of one of the humans' attack fleets during first contact. A war moon, an entire planet converted into a battleship, its entire surface bristling with 10 fleets worth of weapons and its main cannon, a star exploding laser beam weapon. This one was a lot less armed. It had more greenhouse domes and solar arrays than guns, but the guns it did have were still enough to vaporize any fleet in the Imperium. That is an independent. What the hell, sir? You can't possibly tell me that thing is not part of a national fleet, Wartak replied as we panicked. We have a hail, sir. It noticed us, Olivar yelled. Of course they noticed us. They can probably smell the fecal material we've just spewed into our seats. Pull it up, I yelled, adjusting myself in my seat. Attention, unregistered craft, identify yourself immediately. A distorted but clearly feminine voice spoke from the radio. Hold on a second. I think my heart stopped. Wait, there it is. Okay, it didn't stop, I said, holding my hand over my chest. I heard a giggle of some kind coming from the other end of the radio. Okay, my name is Thuran Tor of Clan Kuno Tar. I am a registered merchant of the Scifi Imperium. I'm here to look for a market or somewhere I can do business. Can we have directions to a trade network? I asked, still desperately clutching my chest. Oh, yeah, sure. There's no trade network or market, but I do have stuff to trade and sell, the voice said. That works? Anywhere we can land? I asked. Yeah, sure. There, I've lit up landing platforms for the materials network. Bright green lights. Can't miss them. Land anywhere and I'll be right with you. You do breathe oxygen, right? The voice asked. Yes, we do. Coming in for landing. Thank you, I said. I nodded to Wartak to move and he hesitated, understandably, but eventually came to his senses and flew us towards one of the landing platforms. The closer we got to this thing, the more terrified we became, as the sheer bastarding scale of this place became more apparent the closer we got. Towering edifices of skyscrapers and towering struts atop which sat battleship turrets. Then, as we approached one of the landing platforms, I noticed a certain telltale sign of one of the galaxy's deadliest natural threats. I rushed up out of my seat and peered out the window, and sure enough, inside one of the huge domes, there it was. Is that a Bakandi deathworm? I yelled in a panic, looking at one of the greenhouse domes nearby. We paused mid-landing and looked at the dome. Sure enough, the worm popped up out of the ground, its massive jaws splaying open like a carnivorous flower, absorbing the light from the local star. The dome was a massive mile-wide hexagonal monstrosity covered in heavy transparent glass, covering a field of green grass. The worm had made a series of distinct holes in the ground and was carving tunnels through the planet's crust like they all do, rumbling through absorbing minerals and nutrients in the ground. Human? Human? Are you there? I said into the radio in full panic. Yeah, I'm here. Something go wrong? Don't worry about the turrets, the voice replied. Do you know you have a worm infestation on your planet? Or ship planet? Whatever. We just saw a Bakandi deathworm inside one of those greenhouse domes. You need to defend yourself, I yelled. Bakandi, Deathworm? Oh, so you did see Jeff. He is adorable, isn't he? It's fine. He's just saying hello. That's not a Bacardi. Whatever, Deathworm, that's Jeff. Are you coming in for a landing or what? I'm waiting, the radio replied. Uh, what? Don't. I give up. Just land us, please. I just can't, I said as I slumped in my seat, clutching my chest harder. The ship flew to a landing platform, and we landed with a thud. Oh, why did I do this? Oh, right, money. I strained in my seat and stood up, heading to the cargo bay, still desperately clutching my aching chest. We can run away, sir. Maybe we can find a black hole to fly into or something, Olivar said as we walked together. Might be an option. Oh gods, I'm too old for this. Open cargo, I yelled. The doors opened and an energy field still secured the pressure gradient in the ship. In the time it took us to land and secure, a dome had appeared above us and a tunnel had connected itself to the dome, giving us access to the interior of the planet ship. We were greeted by a train or tram of some kind on a monorail that appeared out of the ground. It rolled into view, stopping nearby, and up from the ground, a series of robotic arms, cranes, and conveyor belts deployed. The train itself had a front engine, a passenger car, and 3 flatbed trailers. Also deploying from the ground, a rather menacing-looking war robot of some kind appeared and stood to attention nearby. The door of the train opened and out stepped a human female. Long, void black hair, brown eyes, and augmented cybernetic. Left arm and what appeared to be a strange-looking pink headset with pointy ear-like accessories. The war robot approached. It was twice her size, humanoid in shape with a pointy head, 4-bladed arms, and a monowheel for mobility. It stood there and stared at us, menacingly. Well, howdy. Welcome to my humble abode. My name is Lorelei. What can I do you for? She said. She had a sweet, inviting, friendly smile and a beautifully melodic voice. Her mannerism of speaking was strangely intimidating, though. Yes? Hello. I hope. I am afraid I don't have much to trade, but I hope we can do business, I said, trying to return her smile. Huh. Nice. A pink space vampire elf, 2 purple goblins, and a space jellyfish. Cool. Never seen aliens before. Nice to meet y'all, she said with a happy tone. Pleasure to meet. You please, excuse me. My heart is attempting to escape at the moment. Too old for this. I remained still and tried to calm down. Do I need to take you to medbay? She asked. No, it's fine. I just need to calm down. This place is insane. You are insane. The deathworm named Jeff is insane. Everything is insane. If I wasn't having heart palpitations, I would assume I were dreaming. Oh dear, I said, leaning against one of the few crates we brought with us while I took a breath. She laughed, at our expense. Apparently this was quite funny. She hopped off the train and used a holographic interface she had to show us a list. So, what did you guys bring? She asked. Musical instruments, reproductions of cultural artifacts, some tourist souvenirs, and a full archived library of our culture. I had no idea what else to bring, and frankly, I could afford nothing else, so here you go, I said, handing her a data pad with the cargo manifest. Oh, cool, that's super useful. Here, see this hollow thingy? That's my current cargo manifest. You can see what you like, and we'll make a deal. Let me load up all you got, and I'll take you to the main cargo bay, she replied, and started loading up the crates we had. Thank you. Quick now on board. Come on. I gestured to my crew and we hopped on the train. I supervised loading the crates. On board and made my way aboard shortly after. The place was a lot more lavishly decorated than I expected. Wood flooring, polished metal guardrails, gilded furniture with silky soft cushioning. My. I love how accommodating our new host is, Wartak said as he sank in a most relaxed manner into his seat. It's terrifying. I have no idea what's more terrifying. Let's just hope this pays off, Aluka said. It will. Despite the circumstances, my bones are tingling. I know this will pay off more than we could ever imagine. I'm certain of it. My brain is screaming, run, run! But my merchant's instinct is screaming a bit louder, saying, money, 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 I reasoned calmly. Well, as calmly as possible. Here we are, gents. Main cargo hub, Lorelei bellowed from her spot up front. Indeed we were. A massive dome built over an enormous crater with tunnels leading in every possible direction straight into the crust of the planet. Machines upon machines. Structures within structures. Cargo trains loaded with tens of thousands of tons of cargo flying on tracks in every conceivable direction. Conveyor belts with crates and boxes weaving in and out of the mess of logistics rope. In the center of it all, a large spheroid structure with thousands of displays of all kinds showing the entire sum of cargo for this place. We stopped at the station there and looked up at the machinery, distracted by the sheer scale and complexity of this manufacturing operation. We were so distracted we failed to notice Lorelei unloading all our cargo and sending it on a train to her vault for safekeeping. She snapped her fingers in front of us and smiled as she regained our attention. Nice. Place, huh? It's not that impressive. I've seen bigger things. Much bigger. But anyway, go up to the console there and take a look. I've already done all the hard work, you can just grab and go, she said with a warm, friendly smile. Oh, bigger. Yes, sure. Why not? What to see? Huh. Calculated cargo volume from a ship scan, max cargo weight, even currency. Exchange rates according to archive data? That was damn fast, I said, looking over the data. Her system had scanned our ship. A max cargo volume, cargo weight, and everything we could possibly need had already been done for me, and I could just click buttons and go. Well, yeah, high cargo volumes, heavy traffic, trade negotiations. We made systems like this centuries ago just to make trade rates easier. Everything's fair. I did some manual checking to at least try give our two economies a fair exchange rate. But first-time customers always get a 1-to-1 trade ratio, so you're welcome, she said again with a happy smile. Seriously? Well, how many? What the actual I yelled, as my jaw dropped on seeing the amount. Their economy was 20 times ours, with an exchange rate of 22.5 Imperial Trade Guild coins to one of their federal exchange credits. No, this can't be right. 6 million? 6 million? This can't be correct. You can't possibly tell me that you are offering me that amount of money for some cheap souvenirs and a historical archive, I yelled out. Well, yeah, I am. That archive is worth its weight in gold to the feds. They always want to learn stuff. It's not like I can't afford it. Anyway, she said. She looked behind us, towards the tunnel we came in from, and waved. Oh, hi, Jeffy. How's my big wormy today? I turned, and my soul evaporated from my body out of sheer terror. Directly in front of us, right there. The death worm. It was standing right there. Its mouth was closed, squirming around on its belly. Its jaws closed like the patchwork of a cloth doll, and above that, 2 long antennae like feeler appendages. Just below 2 small beady eyes. Those eyes stared straight at us. It made no noise and just sat there staring. Its skin had a dark red dusty tint, indicating its primary diet was rich in iron, was pulsing with visible veins and a strange pattern in its scaly, semi-transparent hide. I now had an idea of the size of it. One of the younger, smaller ones, to be certain, but still big enough that it would be a serious threat to anyone. It had to be at least a mile in length, 20, maybe 30 feet in diameter. Weight, I guess somewhere in the range of 2,000 tons. Maybe 50 galactic standard cycles in age. Relatively young, still very small compared to the more notable examples. It sat there, quiet, calm, still, staring at us. Jeffy poo, Lorelei excitedly exclaimed, then moved up to it to hug it. How's my big wormy boy today, huh? You been good? She cooed softly at it, rubbing its metal-tough skin. It looked at her with those tiny eyes and seemed to emit a noise like a purr or happy growl of some kind. It moved its head gently, rubbing, itself against the cooing human. Good boy. What you here for, huh? Want to say hello? Go on. Say hi, Jeffy. She cooed happily, directing the worm to us. What followed was the single most terrifying terror I have ever seen in my life. The worm crumpled its lips, moved its jowls a bit, and scrunched its face, forming its variant amalgam of the single most horrifying smile I have ever or will ever see. I recorded the whole thing. Face to face with a creature the galaxy had known for hundreds of millennia as a demon of death and misery, being treated like a beloved family pet. In a zombie-like state, I raised a hand and waved at it, despite my entire existence being in a state of uncontrollable, soul-crushing fear. Lorelei gave it another hug, then some encouraging pats, cooing at it happily as she did. "Good boy! Good boy! Jeffy want a chickies?" she asked. The beast heard that word and started to growl enthusiastically, the ground shaking from its tail thumping on the ground. "Oh, good! You gotta go find it! Jeffy, go fetch!" she yelled with excitement. The beast slinked back a bit, its mouth pulsing with teeth, and it excitedly sniffled along the ground. It let out a terrifying roar and charged with more speed than any creature that size had any right to move, disappearing down one of the service tunnels. We stood there completely dumbstruck, unable to sapience as we vaguely tried to process the absurd, insane, horrifying thing we just saw. As humans would put it, we could no longer brain. "Ain't he just the cutest?" Lorelei gushed as she pressed some buttons on the trade console. "Anyway, I think I'll try to make it easier for you guys. Here, copy of our own historical archive data, language database, and let's go for some pallets of gold, silver, platinum, titanium, and chromium. According to your archive data, that's pretty pricey stuff," she chirped. My merchant's instinct slapped me out of my terrified daze on hearing the words gold and platinum, and I snapped back to attention. "Money!" I yelled and returned to the console. "How much can I fit in my cargo bay?" She laughed at my vocalization. "My God, just like Mr. Krabs, I like you already. Unfortunately, there's not enough cargo space to fit in most of it. Your ship is too small. In fact, how's about you come back to Terran space with me? We can set up proper trade networks and get your merchant's license set up," she said melodically. Just then, we heard a strange noise. A noise that called us back to Jeff, who had an odd creature squirming around clucking in its antennae. "Good. Boy Jeffy, go on, have your chickies. You earned it," Lorelei chirped at him. Again, my soul disappeared from my body for a bit longer than it already had, as Jeff opened his gaping, tooth-filled, fleshy maw, then with one loud buck gawk, the creature it was holding was torn to shreds in its jowls. Jeff happily chewed on the poor beast, making happy-sounding grumbling noises as its tail thudded on the ground. "Good boy, Jeffy!" "Okay, so let's get you guys situated back on your ship. Then we can ferry you guys through to Terran space," Lorelei said, giving Jeff an encouraging hug. Actually, we'd rather go on our own terms, and, I tried to say. "Oh, grow a spine, you bitch. It's just a worm. Jeff doesn't ever hurt nobody. He's a good boy. Get back to your ship and relax. I'm heading back home to Fed space soon anyway, so you might as well get comfy," Lorelei said scoldingly, chastising us for our apparent cowardice. "Yes, ma'am," was all I could muster in response. We returned to our ship, our cargo hold already chock full of boxes and pallets of ingots, mineral dust, and valuable metals, enough to pay off all our debts and then some. But we couldn't rest. We couldn't relax. We had no peace through the next few days, as no matter where we went, there was Jeff. We sat on the bridge of our ship, shaking in our very skins as through the entire trip into Federation space. There, he was, poking his head out of the tunnel, always just sitting there, smiling at us. Next amazing story. The usual market bustle's a stark contrast from the norm. Sounds of yelling merchants drowned out by the sounds of wizard familiars, random incantations, and the clunking of staves and wands against the sun-baked cobblestone. The Wizardry Festival was in full swing this year, merchants selling their wares to a clientele most of them never even knew existed. Resplendent robes and flowing garments replaced the usual nobility or casual farmer's garb, and with this came the usual inflow of coin that merchants dreamt of. Wizards, mages, and magic users of all stripes would come to the Magic Festival, or, as it has become colloquially known, WizardCon, would gather together once every 10, sometimes 15 years and show off. Alchemists would show off new potions, poisons, cures, and whatnot. Botanists, dryads, and earth mages would show off their new plant species, tree mutations, or crop growth magics. Elemental mages would show off their abilities in a grand arena, demonstrating their control of the elements. Apprentices and students would gain a desperately needed month off their tasks to sit in bars and complain about their masters, fix personal problems, or simply take much-needed rest. The roads were more than just a bit busier than usual, even for the capital city. The biggest concern for all, however, was the new, suddenly inexplicable available position for the king's new court wizard. Grandmaster Marius Tanis suddenly announced his retirement and desperately clawing at the power, responsibility, and cushy position, Wizard Khan was hastily moved to the capital. Thousands of wizards, mages, and magic users of every stripe were now vying for place for the king's favor. One mage, however, had more important things to do. Deep in the bowels of his magic-saturated shop quietly sat Martin the Enchanter, repairing a blue energy orb for a hydromancer who patiently waited in the dressing room. Martin carefully inspected the golf ball-sized gemstone for imperfections and spots, even the slightest blemish resulting in decreased effectiveness. Satisfied with his work, he picks it up using a special set of tongs and heads out to the waiting room. "Here you are, Master Juhai. All fixed." "Pain in the ass, this one." "What the hell did you do it that cracked like that?" Martin asked as he offered the orb to its owner. "Oh, got into a duel with a fire dragon, you know. Just a casual sparring match, of course, but he took a lot out of me," Master Juhai said as he used his magic to levitate the orb. "You do realize this means the warranty is up, right? Warranty covers first-time replacement or repair," Martin said with a gentle smile. "Oh, yeah. I forgot I had the warranty. How much do I owe you again?" Juhai asked. "1 gold coin. Warranty. Took off 90% of the repair and replacement costs, but remember next time you pay full price," Martin said with a chuckle. Juhai blinked in surprise and his pointy elven ears twitched in happiness. "My God, I love this place, and yet the other enchanters wonder why wizards hate them so much. Please excuse me, don't you look now," Juhai said. Master Juhai accusingly wagged his finger at the others as he disappeared behind a changing screen. A gentle flash of bluish light blasted from behind the changing screen, and he reappeared moments later with the magical orb now safely perched atop his wizard's staff. "Ooh, that feels so much better. No longer feel naked, huh? Here you go." Juhai smiled and procured a gold coin from his pocket, handing it over to Martin. "Pleasure doing business with you, sir. Have a lovely day," Martin replied with a smile. Martin returned to his work and decided to dabble a bit more in some obscure enchanting texts. His work, however, was stopped dead in its tracks when a mage, clearly agitated and highly disturbed, charged in the door and grabbed Martin by his collar. She brandished an odd-looking mage's staff with a pink gem, looking like a gnarled stick from a recently felled tree at him. May I help you?" Martin asked, sweating nervously. "What dark, evil magic have you created, you crazy bastard? What is this thing?" she growled at him. "Oh, Ilaria, I remember. You took that to test out the enchantment on it." "What happened?" Martin asked, recognizing the agitated scowl of the local Mages Guild porter. Ilaria frantically shook him from his shopkeeper's daze, and she pulled him from behind his counter and slammed him to the ground. "Don't toy with me! What evil did you create?" "Calm down, woman, please. For the mist's sake, could you stop throwing me around and actually tell me what's going on?" Martin yelled back at her as 2 adventurers from the guild stepped in the door to check the commotion. This stick, this strange staff you had me test. Paladin Eric the Brave." "Oh boy, here we go," Martin replied with an eye roll. She scowled at him and yelled louder. "Pay attention, damn it!" she squealed. The adventurers hastily stood between the enchanter and the mage, knowing how magic users with temper tantrums can be a bit bothersome. "Calm down, woman, please. What is going on?" one adventurer said as he helped poor Martin off the floor. This. One adventurer drew his sword, forcing Ilaria to calm the hell down. She took a deep breath and centered herself. "This enchanter has been dabbling in some truly dark and disturbing magic. The enchantment on this stick, this staff, this is The most dangerous thing I had ever touched in my life. I demand to know what the enchantment on this thing is, she yelled angrily. Okay, whoa. What happened? No, seriously. Calm the hell down and tell me what happened, Martin said, holding his hands out in a calming manner. She took a deep breath. Sir Eric the Brave had been attempting to bed me for months. The stupid prat wouldn't leave me alone, even going so far as to force me to involve the guild in my personal issues in order to stop his advances. Finally, I had enough and smacked him with this thing, she yelled and tossed the stick at Martin. I see. And that is bad, how? The adventurers asked. He stopped. He was trying to touch me, and I smacked him. He suddenly stopped following me, dropped to his knees and calmly told me what he did was wrong and apologized, then calmly walked away like a zombie. This is mind control magic, she yelled. Wait. What? Martin said as he looked at the stick. Martin ignored the proceeding, ran and moved back to his desk with the staff to inspect it. He used the tongs, still being verbally assaulted by the panicked Ilaria, and carefully removed the gem to figure out what was in it. He didn't see much except for an inscription written in the mage's language, revealed by his sage glass, a magnifying glass used by enchanters to fix magic gemstones. That's okay, Martin said to himself despite Ilaria's screeching. Martin returned the gemstone to its place on the staff and stood up. And I want this man arrested. Bonk. Martin deftly swung the stick onto Ilaria's head, resulting in a comical coconut bonk noise. Ilaria was taken by surprise and stumbled back into a shelf of scrolls and stood there dazed for a few seconds. She looked around her, rubbed her forehead, and groaned. She then spoke in a calm, entirely uncharacteristic note of peacefulness. I'm sorry about my behavior. It was entirely unwarranted. I definitely overreacted, and that situation was very poor, especially for someone of my station. I apologize for that. Can you please tell me what the staff actually does? She said. Two adventurers. Their jaws dropped and arms fell to their sides in shock as this panicked elven woman suddenly became as calm as a gentle breeze. Martin simply smiled. Oh, so that's what that enchantment does. Been wondering what it meant by the grandma special? What? All three of them said. I dabble in enchanting. When I find a spare gemstone lying around or when the Miners Guild gives me their cast-offs for Symborium crystals, I play with them to see what kinds of enchantments and mage stones I can make. Just like any enchanter worth the salt in their blood. I always wondered what the enchantment on this thing actually did. It's not a mind control enchantment, Martin said with a smirk. So, what exactly does it do? Ilaria asked, again, her voice disturbingly calm. On a dare, a drunk wizard at the pub once asked me to, quote, channel the fury and anger of a grandmother's discipline into a magic object and see what happens. So I did. Being drunk, I did. I had no idea what the actual effect would be, but it seems it works. I need to make more of these. That's hilarious. Martin chuckled to himself and carried on as if nothing happened. The two adventurers glared at each other. With Martin distracted as he returned to his work with a sudden influx of wizards requesting new equipment, the two grabbed Ilaria, the staff, and returned her to the Mages Guild. The pair charged towards the Adventurers Guild and quietly abducted two of their most notorious companions, Bird and Reggie, by grabbing them, tying them up, and putting bags over their heads. The two then charged their way into the palace, still carrying their abducted friends, and caused quite the commotion as they plopped the two quarrelsome sods at the king's feet. What is the meaning of this? How dare you interrupt proceedings? Explain yourself! The king loudly bellowed as his guards positioned themselves appropriately. Your Majesty, my name is Cassard the Strong, and this is my companion James the Eye Pillar. We come on behalf of Martin the Enchanter, owing to the fact he's swamped with work at present, Cassard said. Angered, muffled voices came from the two tied men. We have discovered that Martin the Enchanter has created the single greatest and most powerful magical enchantment in the history of magic. An enchantment that will guarantee to change the course of all history for the greater good, James said with glee. We have come to demonstrate this enchantment. This is Bird and Reggie, Cassard said. The crowd released a notable scowling chuckle at the two men's expense in response to their names. "Oh God, not those two idiot," the king said. "Please, Majesty, and observe," James said, and lifted the hoods off the two men. The two men garbled idle threats, Bird being a lizardman and Reggie being a northerner. The two at first aimed their ire at their abductors, then upon seeing each other a volley of threats, made-up curses and heavily abusive insults flowed like an endless river at each other. "Behold," James said above their irritating, angry bitching. "The Grandma's special!" he yelled. Bonk, bonk, two comical coconut bonk noises followed as James whacked Bird on the head, handed the staff to Cassern, who then whacked James on his head. The two stopped talking and lay dazed on the floor for a bit as their bonds were removed. Everyone steeled themselves for a huge bitch fight. Bird and Reggie were notorious blood rivals who go at each other's throats every time they even think. "The other one is in the area." The two had suddenly calmed down, were quiet, their voices sweet, peaceful, and gentle. The two looked at each other, quietly having a conversation without speaking. They both stood up and shook hands. "No more fighting," Bird said. "No more fighting," Reggie said. The two shook hands and calmly walked away, heading back to the guild hall in silence, an odd air of peace following them. The king himself, even members of his personal guard, were so shocked by this sudden occurrence, one paladin dropped his claymore. Cassern and James looked at each other, equally shocked. "Well, holy shit, that actually worked," Cassern said. "Aye." "No, right? Is it permanent?" James asked. "If this enchantment is what I think it is, it's about as permanent as it gets," Cassern replied, carefully inspecting the staff. "What the actual fuck?" the king said. "Oh, sorry. The best I can figure, Your Majesty, is this staff essentially distills the concept of knocking the sense into people into physical practice," Cassern replied. "In short, as Grandma once said, no sense, whack, sense," James replied, presenting the staff to the king. The king looked carefully at the staff, picked it up, then gently inspected it. He walked over to his advisor, a notoriously grumpy sort. The king, with an almighty bonk, bashed his advisor on the head with the staff and waited for a response. His advisor cradled his head for a bit. His usual gruff, angered mannerism was replaced with an oddly peaceful demeanor. "Your Majesty, you bashing me on the head was very annoying, but maybe I have been a bit harsh with the tax pushes lately. I will reconsider this during next week's tax drafts. Maybe we don't need that much coin this year." The aging dark elf said, then calmly walked away. The king rushed towards James and Cassern, grabbing both men by their collars and growling into their faces. "I will take your entire stock," the king yelled loudly. "This is the origin story of the most powerful, wealthiest, and most respected mage in history, Martin de Silvano, a human enchanter who created the Grandma Special, otherwise known as the Staff of Common Sense. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.